I'm Walula, a web developer from UND. Let's talk. Web development, full stack, learn coding. In this video, we are going to understand the basics of application development. Today in IT field, there are many different types of applications. It is not only about web application. There are mainly three common types of application. Web application, mobile application, desktop application. Let's understand them one by one. A web application is an application that runs inside a web browser. For example, when you open a website or web application in Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge, that is a web application. A mobile application is an application that you download and install on your Android or iPhone. For example, application downloaded from the Google Play Store or Apple App Store are mobile applications. The third type is a desktop application. A desktop application is installed directly on a computer or laptop and runs on the desktop. So these are three different types of application: web application, mobile application, and desktop application. Now let's understand an important programming language, C#. Microsoft developed C# as a programming language. C# has many useful features and was designed using ideas from languages such as C, C++, and Java. The important thing is that C# can be used to develop different type of applications with the help of the appropriate framework. For example, you can develop web application, desktop application, and mobile application using C# and the related .NET technologies. This makes C# a very useful and flexible language. Imagine you are working in a company. Today the company may have a web application project. Tomorrow the company may get a mobile application project. If you already know C#, it becomes easier to move between different technologies because the basic programming language is the same. That is why when learning programming, you should focus strongly on the language first rather than only focusing on one framework. If your programming language is strong, learning a new framework becomes much easier. A framework contains a lot of ready-made code and tools. Developers use these ready-made features to build applications faster. For example, if you select a web application project, the framework can provide a basic environment and template for web development. If you select a mobile application project, it can provide the required environment for mobile development. So the framework makes development easier, but the programming language is still very important. .NET framework. Application architecture. Now let's understand another important concept. An application can generally be understood using three main parts: front-end, back-end, and database. Let's understand these three parts using a simple example. Imagine a restaurant. When you enter a restaurant, you can see the table, chairs, lights, decoration, menu, and other things. This is the part that the customer can see and interact with. In an application, this is similar to the front end. The front end is the part of the application that the user can see and interact with. Now think about the restaurant kitchen. Customers normally do not go into the kitchen. The kitchen is where the actual processing happens. In an application, this is similar to the backend. The backend contains the service and logic that work behind the scenes. Then we have the database. A database stores information. For example, imagine that you order food in a restaurant. The information about the order has to be stored somewhere. In an application, user information, logic, information, comments, product, orders, and other records can be stored in a database. So in simple words, front end for the user sees, back end the processing that happens behind the scene, database where the data is stored. Web application example. Let's take a simple example. Suppose you open Facebook in your browser. The page that you see is the front end. Now suppose you write a comment. You click the comment button. The comment does not simply disappear. The application sends the information to the backend. The backend processes the request and stores the required information in the database. Later, when you log in, again the application can get your comments from the database and show it to you. So the complete process is something like this: front-end, back-end database. And when the information is needed again, database, back-end, front-end. This is the basic idea of how an application works. Full stack development. When a developer works with the front end, back end, and database, we call this full stack development. A full stack developer understands different parts of an application. For example, on the front end, we have technologies such as HTML, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, React, Bootstrap. On the back end, we can have C#, Java, Python, PHP, Node.js. And on the database side, we can have SQL Server, MySQL, MongoDB. There are many technologies available. In this course, our focus is on the .NET technology stack. We will use C# for programming. We will use .NET and ASP.NET MVC for web application development. For the database, we will use SQL Server. For front-end development, we will work with technologies such as HTML, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, and Bootstrap. HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Now let's understand the front end. A browser mainly works with three important technologies: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. HTML is used to define. You can think of HTML as the skeleton of a website. It defines things such as heading, paragraph, button, form, image, and other elements. CSS is used for the design and appearance of the website. For example, colors, spacing, positioning, font, and layout can be controlled using CSS. JavaScript is used to add functionality and interaction. For example, when you click a button and something happens immediately on the page, JavaScript can be involved. So remember this simple concept: HTML structure, CSS design, JavaScript functionality. These three technologies are very important for web development. JavaScript libraries and framework. Now let's understand libraries and framework. Companies normally use different libraries and frameworks instead of writing everything from the beginning. For example, jQuery is a JavaScript library. React is also a very popular technology used for front-end development. There are many other technologies as well. The important point is this: if you understand JavaScript properly, learning another JavaScript library or framework becomes easier. For example, a company may use jQuery today and move to React in the future. If you only know jQuery and do not understand JavaScript properly, changing technology can become difficult. But if your JavaScript fundamental are strong, learning React become much easier. That is why we should focus on the basic language first. The framework can be learned later. In this course, we use jQuery because it is widely used in many .NET projects. The goal is not to learn a technology just because it is popular. The goal is to learn technologies that are useful for real development and job opportunities. Backend technology. There are also many technologies for backend development. For example, Python is a programming language. Django and Flash are Python framework. Java is another programming language. Spring and Spring Boot are commonly used with Java. Similarly, C# is the language we are going to use. .NET is the platform and framework ecosystem we will work with. So remember: Python, Django, Flash, Java, Spring Boot, C# .NET. The language is the foundation. The framework is built around the language. Database. Now let's talk about databases. There are many database technologies available. For example, SQL Server, MySQL, and MongoDB. In this course, we will focus on SQL Server. We will also learn SQL, which stands for Structured Query Language. SQL is used to communicate with a relational database. We can use SQL to create, read, update, and delete data. These four operations are commonly called CURL. CURL operation. Create. C for create. R for read. U for update. D for delete. Create means creating a new record. Read means getting data from the database. Update means changing existing data. Delete means removing data. These are basic but very important database operations. While on full stop, now you may now you may ask, why should we learn front and backend and database together? Because companies often need developers who can understand the complete application. A front-end developer mainly focuses on the user interface. A front-end developer mainly focuses on the user interface. A backend developer mainly works with business logic and service. A database developer focuses mainly on data and database operation. A full stack developer understands all three areas. This can make a developer more flexible because they can understand how different parts of the application work together. That is why our goal is to understand full stack development. Bootstrap. Now let's talk about Bootstrap. Bootstrap is a popular front-end CSS framework. It provides ready-made styles and components that help developers create user interface faster. Instead of creating every design from zero, we can use Bootstrap components and customize them according to our requirements. Bootstrap is commonly used with web development projects, including .NET projects. So in our front-end section, we will also work with Bootstrap. Mobile application development. For mobile application development, there are different technologies. For example, Java and Android SDKs are used for Android development. Swift is used for iOS development. There is also React Native, which allows developers to build mobile applications using JavaScript-based technology. The important thing is to understand the relationship between the language and the framework. For example, JavaScript is the language. React is a JavaScript library used heavily in front-end development. React Native is used for mobile application development. Similarly, C#, the programming language we are focusing on, and .NET provides the platform and framework around it. Application development and job skills. Now let's understand why learning multiple technologies can be useful. If a developer only know one very specific technology, they may have a fewer options when a company technology change. But a developer who understands programming fundamentals and multiple parts of application development can adapt more easily. For example, if a company moves from one framework to another developer with strong programming fundamentals can learn the new framework more quickly. So the main focus should be strong programming fundamentals plus practical development skills. What we learn in this course. Now let's talk about the course topic. The main technology include C#, .NET, ASP.NET MVC, SQL Server, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, Bootstrap, Web API, Entity Framework. We will also work on projects so that you can understand how these technologies are used in real applications. We will not focus only on theory. We will also write code and practice. C# from basic to advanced. We will start with C# from the basic. Even if you have never written code before, you can start from the basic. We will gradually move from basic concept to advanced concept. We will also learn object-oriented programming, commonly called OOP. OOP is very important in C# and .NET development. Some important OOP concepts include classic, object, encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism, abstraction. We will understand this concept step by step. What is a programming paradigm? You may hear the word paradigm in programming. A programming paradigm basically means a way or style of writing program. Object-oriented programming is one programming paradigm. It provides a particular way to design and organize code. In .NET development, understanding object-oriented programming is very important. That is why we will give strong focus to this concept. MVC architecture. Now let's understand MVC. MVC stands for Model View Controller. MVC is an architectural pattern. It is not limited only to one programming language. Different technologies can use the MVC pattern. In an ASP.NET MVC application, the main parts are model view controller. Suppose a user clicks a button or enters a URL. The request can go to the controller. The controller processes the request. It may get data from the model. Then the controller sends the required information to the view. The view presents the result to the user in the browser. So the basic flow is user controller model view browser. We will understand this complete process practically. Web API. We will also learn about Web API. Web API is used to create service that can communicate with different applications. For example, a web application or mobile application can communicate with a backend service or service through an API. We will also create a small project so that you can understand how web API works. This will give you practical knowledge instead of only theoretical knowledge. Entity framework. We will also learn entity framework. Entity framework is an ORM tool used in .NET application. ORM stands for Object Relational Mapping. It is help developer work with database data using programming objects. We will use it practically so that you can understand how application interact with the database. Debugging. One very important skill for a developer is debugging. You will not always write perfect code. Sometimes your code will have errors. Instead of avoiding errors, we will intentionally create some errors during practice. Then we will understand what caused the error, why did the errors happen, how can we find the problem, and how can we fix it. This process is called debugging. A bug is a problem or error in an application. Debugging means finding and fixing that problem. This is an important practical skill for every developer. SQL Server and database practice. Along with C#, we will also learn SQL. We will understand how databases work and how applications interact with them. We will write SQL queries and perform CRUD operations. We will also work with SQL Server Management Studio, commonly called SSMS. SSMS stands for SQL Server Management Studio. It is a tool used to work with SQL Server databases. IDE, Integrated Development Environment. Now let's understand another important term, IDE. IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment. An IDE is a software environment where developers can write, run, test, and debug their code. The word integrated means that different development tools are combined into one environment. For example, an IDE can provide code editor, compiler, debugger, project management tool, other development features. For .NET development, one of the main IDE is Visual Studio. Visual Studio is used to develop applications and work with .NET technology. So you can think of Visual Studio as a complete development environment for .NET development. Visual Studio. We will use Visual Studio for our .NET development. Visual Studio provides an environment where we can create project, write C# code, build application, run application, and debug errors. The exact version can depend on the company and project. In real companies, you may find different versions in use. The important thing is to understand the development environment and learn how to work with it. LTS, long-term support. You may also see the term LTS when downloading software or development tools. LTS means long-term support. An LTS version is generally maintained and support for a longer period. when choosing software or a development platform, taking the supported and stable version is important. In professional development, stability is often more important than simply using the newest version immediately. Course practice. This is this course is not only about this course is not only about watching lecture. You need you need regular practice. For example, if you study a concept in class but never practice it yourself, it will be difficult to remember. So daily coding practice is very important. Try to spend regular time writing code, solving error, reviewing concept and building a small program. The more consistently you practice, the more comfortable you become with programming. Laptop and development environment. For .NET development, you need a suitable computer or laptop. We should have enough RAM and processing power to run development tools such as Visual Studio comfortably. A practical development environment is important because you will be writing and running code regularly. Hands-on learning. Another important part of the course is hands-on practice. You will not only watch someone write code, you will also write the code yourself. You will practice the same concept on your own computer. You may receive coding exercises, assignments, and practical tasks. This helps you understand the concept better. Next, test and mock interview. Test and mock interview. Testing your knowledge is also important. Tests can help you understand where you currently stand. Mock interviews can also help you prepare for technical interviews. During interview preparation, you can practice questions related to C Sharp, .NET, MVC, Web API, database, SQL, front-end, full stack development. The goal is not only to know the answer. You should also be able to explain the concept clearly. Next, English and communication. In technical interviews, you do not need to speak extremely difficult English. You need to understand the technical concept and explain it clearly. For example, if an interviewer asks you about polymorphism, you should be able to explain the concept in simple English. Good communication means explaining what you know clearly. You do not need complicated vocabulary. You need confidence, understanding, and clear communication. Next, resume and job preparation. Job preparation is another part of becoming a developer. You need to understand how to create a professional resume. Your resume should clearly show your skills, projects, and relevant knowledge. You should not mention technology that you do not actually understand. During an interview, the interviewer may ask questions based on the technology listed on your resume. So your resume should honestly represent your skill. You can also create professional profile on job platform and keep them updated with your skills and projects. Next, not job guarantee. One important point should be clearly understood. Training or course can provide knowledge, practice, guidance, and interview preparation, but no course can honestly guarantee that every student will get a job. Getting a job also depends on your own preparation, skill, communication, interview, performance, and the requirements of the company. So the goal of the course is prepare you strongly enough that you can apply for job and perform well in interview. Next, course duration and practice. The course may take several months depending on the topic, classes, practice, and progress. There can also be some extra time for revision, miss, miss classes, additional topic, or specific. The important thing is not simply finishing the course quickly. The important thing is understanding the concept properly. Final goal, final goal, become a full stack developer. Now let's summarize everything. An application can have their an application can have three major parts: front end, back end, database. For the front end, we can use HTML, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, and Bootstrap. For the back end, we can use C# and .NET. For databases development, we can use SQL Server and SQL. Then we can connect all these parts together. When you understand the complete application from the user interface to the backend and database, you are moving toward full stack development. The most important thing is to build a strong fundamental, learn C# properly, understand object-oriented programming, learn how .NET works, understand MVC, learn SQL and databases concepts, understand HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, learn how the front end communicates with the backend, learn how the backend communicates with the database. And most importantly, practice by writing real code. Do not only watch tutorials. Write the code yourself. Make mistakes. Understand the errors. Fix them. That is how your programming skill becomes stronger. So if you are starting from zero, don't worry. Start with the basics. Learn one concept at a time. Practice regularly and slowly move toward building complete application. That is the main purpose of learning application development and becoming a full stack developer. Keep learning, keep practicing, and keep building projects.